Good evening, Russell. Thank you for inviting me to your program.
First of all, this is incredible information. I predict that this very well may be my best show ever. No pressure, Klaus.
Don't give me pressure.
Just have a sip of tea, calm down. You'll do great. So, for the audience who doesn't know, who is Klaus Dona?
I'm 63 years old, and in the past I did several jobs. I was, for example, from 1982 until 1987, marketing manager Southeast Asia for the Vienna Tourist Board. And later on, I started doing cultural exhibitions. I did about 30 big cultural exhibitions from Austria in Japan and also one in Korea. And on the long trips in the airplane and the sleepless nights through the jet lag in the hotels, I wrote many books from famous authors concerning so-called O parts, out-of-place artifacts or strange buildings, mysterious civilizations and so on. And I was a big skeptic, and I didn't believe that all these things are real. And I had the idea, together with a friend of mine, Reinhard Habeck. We started 1997 the project Unsolved Mysteries, trying to make an exhibition in Vienna, and we tried to show some of these strange artifacts. And we started, and a friend of us, a museum director, we researched, first of all, only artifacts which are in museums, and we found a list of approximately 350 pieces. And a friend of mine, the museum director, wrote to his colleagues all around the world if they would lend us these artifacts for our exhibition. And after 1.5 years, we got the result. Out of all requests, one yes, and all the other museums, they refused. They had some excuses, they need the pieces, or they are not in a good condition, so they cannot lend us. So it was just 1.5 years before the planned schedule of the exhibition, and that was the turning point. We started to research by ourselves through telephone, through many trips to South America, Central America, North America, and in Europe. And finally, in June 21st, 2001, we could present in Vienna in the exhibition Unsolved Mysteries 470 artifacts. And that was the beginning. And before, we had some tests on some of the pieces, and not one was found as a fraud or as new made. So slowly I changed from skeptica to more and more interested, and since the last 11 years I was traveling a lot around the world, and I found many more of these really unexplainable artifacts.
So how old are some of these artifacts? Some of the DNA testings have been done. I imagine with most of them there's a massive bureaucratic process.
Yeah, it's very difficult. First of all, if you have to pay all the research and even the tests by yourself, you cannot do whatever you want because it costs a lot of money. And we did some tests in Vienna, for example, on some of the pieces from Colombia, and the final result. First, we did the material check, and then we asked the top expert worldwide on stone and precious stone work to check us those pieces, and his answer was, I wouldn't believe it if I wouldn't have attended the test, the material test. So I know what kind of material it is, and the only thing I can tell you is we are not able to do the same pieces with our high tech today. But as you know, Stone Age dating is impossible, so we don't know how old these species are. But the oldest known pre-Columbian culture is the Valdivia culture, and this goes back about 6,000 years. So these species should be older than 6,000 years, but nobody knows who made these artifacts.
So carbon dating won't tell you anything?
Carbon dating, oh yeah, if it's organic material or ceramic or something like that, you get an age, of course. But still the C14 method, sometimes it is not perfect because it also depends if the piece was too long under sunshine, the C14 test will not be exactly.
So what is the process when someone finds an artifact?
Yeah, that's another of the big problems. For example, if it's an archaeological finding, then you have all the written reports and everything, and then it will be accepted. But many or nearly all of the most strange artifacts, they were found by private persons. So that means if you have not an archaeological report on some of the pieces, it is very hard to get the acceptance from the science.
Is it your opinion that there is a suppression of knowledge in this field?
It's how to say. There are many examples. If scientists are checking some of those strange artifacts and they find out some really strange results, they face real problems in their universities or in their communities. For example, there is one great biophysicist in Hawaii, William Brown. He started a real sensational research on the DNA, and he did some reports, and he attended a conference in South Africa, and he did some radio interviews, and after that he was asked by the university to leave the university. So you can imagine that scientists are scared to lose their job or getting problem if they give out some very unbelievable but real fact on some of those pieces.
So there's an accepted worldview as, the official storyline, as it were. And if it doesn't fit into this storyline, it's very difficult to get in.
That's right.
So what is the official story then?
The official story is the story you learn at school, that the oldest civilizations are approximately 6,000 years. And before, nobody knows really what happened. And there is the so-called mythology about Atlantis, about the sunken continent Mu, about giants in history. All these things are not approved until now. So, and there are many pieces, if they really would be accepted as official archaeological findings, real findings, the science would get a missing link, in my opinion, at least more than 100 million years.
Are you suggesting then that people have been here for 100 million years? Homo sapiens?
Nobody knows if it was Homo sapiens, but there are footprints in stone. For example, in Bolivia was one found. Age dated by the geologists of this stone formation is about 50 million years. For me, some of the most interesting pieces I saw personally were found in Colombia, in an area which is called Villa de Leyva. It's a very mystical place, and you have there millions of fossils, but they found there a petrified human skeleton hand and foot in a stone plate. The stone plate, geological dating is about 120 to 140 million years. And in the same area, they found many petrified cultivated fruits and vegetables like cocoa beans, banana, pineapple, corn, avocado, and others. Definitely approved petrified cultivated fruits and vegetables. So that means dinosaurs would not have been able to cultivate, for example, bananas or cocoa.
Dinosaurs go back 65 million years ago. Right?
65 million years, that's what science is telling us. The dinosaurs disappeared most probably through a very big impact in the Gulf of Mexico. But a close friend of mine, a very respectable researcher, Michael Cremo, he did a lot of research, especially on the age of human, and he found many results which really were showing him and also to me that human lived on Earth even before 100 million years. But that's impossible for the official science because it would leave a missing link of about 100 or more million years. And I think we had several times a very big catastrophe on Earth. If we talk about catastrophe, for me, the 21st of December 2012 is not the end of the Earth, definitely not, because we are planning already trips in 2013 and 14, and I'm not scared about that. There might be an importance of this date. We don't know what. There are many talks about in internet. I don't know what happens, but I think it's just the end of one era, and the next era concerning the Mayan calendar will start.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Mayans couldn't even predict their own demise.
That's right, but there are so many strange species also, especially in Mexico. For example, I got information about 2 years ago about hundreds or at least or even thousands of pieces, very strange artifacts with strange engravings, which of course we showed one time some of these photos on a conference together with Nassim Haramein, the physicist living in Hawaii, a great man also. He is now working with William Brown together. I think that's the most sensational teamwork. And of course, you can imagine that on internet we are liars, we are fraudulent and all these things. But Nassim did some age dating on some stone masks from this collection. Because it's like a mosaic on a stone mask, and they used a kind of natural material as a glue, and they could make an age dating on this material. It is so unbelievable that we decided to do another 1 or 2 tests on other institutions so that we have definitely the final exactly answer, and then we would announce it on the internet.
So what would happen in the scientific community to an archaeologist or a researcher, a well-respected one, that would, start reinforcing your theories? Would they be outed in the community as a quack? Would they lose funding?
Yes, definitely. Look, you have another very famous example in United States. In the I think it was 1964, a young student was sent to Mexico to do some research, archaeological and geological research. And when she wrote the report to the university, her boss, Dr. Virginia Steen McIntyre, was asked by the university to fly down to Mexico to look what this young student is doing mistakes, because the report was saying about coal finding, fireplaces. She found fireplaces and several artifacts, stone artifacts there, and age dating on organic material dated an age of 150,000 years. So that's impossible, because officially the first human living in the Americas, they came from Asia while the last ice age. That means approximately 15,000 years ago. So when Virginia Steen McIntyre went to Mexico, and she did very serious research, and the result was 250,000 years. When she published the result, she was fired from the university, and since then she never ever got any official job. So it's not easy for a scientist to deal with these unbelievable things.
There was a discovery in Ecuador. Could you tell the audience about that?
Yes. There was an Ecuadorian engineer, Sotomayor. He was working for a British mining company in an area where there's a little town called La Mana, and they did gold digging, and one day they found an underground tunnel, and inside this underground tunnel, Engineer Sotomayor found approximately over 300 artifacts, and he brought them out. They were very well in condition, and most of them do not fit any existing pre-Columbian culture. So that means those pieces, someone must have brought them to this place called La Mana. For example, for me, every of those pieces is very interesting, but some of them, especially a very big granite stone. It's about 350 kilo heavy. And on this granite stone, you have a natural quartz line going around the stone, and you have end carvings, and you can see the world map, and you can identify, for example, Italy, Greek, you have Saudi Arabia, you have India. India on this stone map is bigger than on our maps. And as you remember, after the big tsunami, they found some sunken cities under the sea level offshore India. So that means India in the past was definitely bigger. So that would be one point, that this map could be reality. But you have also an inlay in the Middle East, and it shows an eye, and then the quartz line is going, passing the Mediterranean, passing the Atlantic Ocean, and you have in the Atlantic Ocean, you have a big island which does not exist in our days, and there are so many stories about the sunken continent Atlantis, and then this line, this natural quartz line goes down, passing Venezuela and going into Ecuador, and at where today is the city of Guayaquil, there is an inlay showing up to the north and around inlay again, and that's exactly the place where La Mana is located. And then it passes the Pacific Ocean, and you have also some big islands which do not exist in this in our days, and especially Japan and Taiwan. It's one long continent from the northeast Japanese islands, which belong today to Russia, the Sakhalin Islands. Far down of Taiwan, you have one long island, one long continent, and the undersea geologist Professor Masaaki Kimura the Japanese professor who is doing the research on the big stone monuments under the sea level close to the southeast Japanese island Yonaguni. He said that his research gives him the explanation that once upon a long time there was one continent from the northeast Japanese island until far down of Taiwan. And as he's saying, it's exactly encarved in this stone. But the under the sea level found big stone structures of Yonaguni were found in 1984, and the research started 1 or 2 years later. That means before later than the stone world map was found in Ecuador. So there cannot be any connection between the two findings. So for me that means that this stone map, if it shows Japan, like Japan and Taiwan as one continent, and also one continent in the Atlantic Ocean, the legend or the stories about the sunken continent Atlantis and sunken continent Mu, for me there is a big reality behind these stories. I think so.
There's also Lemuria as well, right?
Lemuria, there's also, yes, there is another big continent south of the Pacific Ocean, close to South America, which does not exist in this in our days.
In these maps, they show, in some of these maps, they show Antarctica as green without ice.
Oh yeah, there are several old maps which are showing places which do not fit our today's knowledge.
We do know that Antarctica was once green and a lush rainforest, I believe. How far back in the geological record do you have to go to see that kind of climate there?
That's a good question. Yes. So that's for me another point why I think that there were several times in the past big catastrophes on Earth, which changed the climate and brought many problems. And maybe we had, and that's another story, because I think once upon a time, long time ago, there was one global civilization, or at least a global connection, because we found stones with the same unknown writings in Colombia, Ecuador, Illinois, United States, Clausel, France, Malta, the Mediterranean island, Calabria in Italy, Turkmenistan, and even in Australia.
Have you come to any personal grand conclusions?
No. No, the problem is, the more you find, the more question you find. That's the biggest problem. I think it's very hard to find a final answer on all these questions.
Do you believe it could be aliens? Have you found any evidence to support aliens or extraterrestrials, whatever?
I always say, as long as I do not have personally an approval, I would not say it could be and it could not be. For me, more, I think we had high civilizations on Earth in the past. That's for me one point which I think is reality. Connection with aliens, there are some pieces which could be connected with aliens, but as I said before, as long as I do not have an approval, I would not like to say so.
You've got skulls that are elongated. You've got the giants. These aren't humans, but they're humanoid.
Yes, but nobody knows if they are connected with aliens, and as long as I don't know it exactly, I wouldn't say so.
Some of this always points to the Anunnaki, the Zecharia Sitchin stuff. Serpents. Throughout all cultures, the serpent is always there.
That's right.
Why could that be? Is it just because we had a global society and perhaps we prayed to some serpent god, or was there possibly a race of serpents that controlled humanity?
I don't think so. No, I wouldn't say so. The snake, of course, not only the snake, also the frog was a very, very important animal. You can find antique, very old frogs in China, in South America, especially in South America. The frog was a very, very important animal, not only the snake. So, but also the puma or the eagle. So this question is really hard to answer for me. I have no real answer.
Well, this is good that you don't have an answer, because that means you have no agenda in the research.
There are some pieces which I told you before. We found, I got many photos and also some pieces for research from Mexico. And they are showing flying objects. They are showing, I would say, very strange human with very big eyes. They show some wormholes. They show some sun eruptions. So that could be a connection with extraterrestrials, but there is no guarantee. It could have been also that humans were already so far with their technology that they could fly into the to another star or to other planetariums.
But if they were so advanced, why are they engraving on rocks?
Yeah, for me, maybe they knew that rock is the only material which does not change the surface. Because if they put something on a videotape or on a DVD or on any other material, definitely after a few hundred, few thousand years, nothing would exist anymore.
The medical instruments you found, they're extremely advanced. I think obsidian is one of the major ones.
No, it's not obsidian. It's
it's ludite.
Yes. This stone is very hard, but the structure is like leaves. That means you cannot make, and that's what I told you before, that the number one expert on stone and precious stone work, Dr. Distelberger, he was the director of the treasure room of the most famous museum in Austria. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, and he was a good friend of mine. Through the cultural exhibitions, we went 3 times together to Japan, and he accepted to do me the tests on these artifacts from Colombia. But we brought first the pieces to the Natural Historical Museum, to the Mineralogical Department, and they did a very serious and exactly material check, and it was ludite, definitely. And that's why he said, if I would have not attended the test, I wouldn't believe that this is ludite. We say ludite in German language. And after checking the pieces one by one, he said, I can just assure you we are not able to do the same pieces from the same material in our days. So who made it? So now you could say, if I would like to make a big story, I would say they must be from aliens because we are not able to do them. But as I said before, we do not know how far advanced civilization in the past on Earth was already.
Yeah, it's a very real stretch of imagination just to assume that because you don't know, it must be aliens.
Yes, that's what I don't like to say, just because we have no explanation must be alien. No, there's no approval for me. For me, there is no approval.
I always appeal to Carl Sagan. He said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yes, of course, because otherwise it's even getting more and more difficult to get good scientists doing some check on these species. because they would face big problems in their university, of course.
And then it all comes back to money. They're going to lose their funding, and they won't be able to do any research.
Of course, and there are many examples what happened to good scientists.
What do you mean, the Jimmy Hoffa treatment? Or
I never would like to fight against the science, never ever, because they are doing a very good and great job. And it's understandable that it's difficult for them to handle those strange pieces. It's very difficult because everybody would expect an answer from them. But as we had the example with those medical instruments from Colombia, there is no answer. The only answer is we cannot make it from the same material today. But you have no answer. How old is it? Who made it? How did they make it? There's no answer.
But we have, institutions. I think of Zawi Hawass, the ex-curator of, it was always the same story. And if it ever deviated, they wouldn't accept it.
That's
so
right.
You have institutions, set up organizations with a period of history that they accept, and that's the story.
That's right, yeah.
Let's take a break, Klaus. I want to talk about the Illuminati connection to some of these findings. And some of the imagery, the proverbial pyramid with the eye. Everybody associates that with Illuminati, Freemasonry, the dollar bill, Henry Kissinger. And now you've you've researched many of these pieces. There's one in particular that I found unbelievable. It's a pyramid carved into rock. Well, go ahead.
It's about 27 centimeters high, and on the surface there is an inlay of an eye in gray stone and 13 steps. But if you put this pyramid under ultraviolet light, the eye is glowing very, very strange. It looks like, not like a human eye, very strange. And on the bottom of the pyramid, you have the gold inlay of the Orion constellation. And in this unknown, until now officially unknown writing, there was one professor in Germany who could translate this language, and his translation was, "The Son of the Creator comes." So this pyramid was found also together with the Stone World map and the other more than 300 pieces in La Mana in Ecuador. And when I found this private collection, I was very happy, of course, when I saw all these pieces, and then the owner was putting them into a room, and he closed the curtain and the light, and he brought ultraviolet light inside the room. The eye of the pyramid was glowing very strong, and also many other inlays of other artifacts. And I was so happy about these pieces, and I asked the owner if I can take some of them to my exhibition in Vienna 2001. It was in the year 2000 when I saw first time these artifacts. So the owner told me he would like to lend me some pieces, but he must ask the chief of the local indigenous people, because for them these artifacts had a spiritual importance. So next evening we had another meeting there, and the leader of the indigenous people came, and when the owner Herman asked him if he can lend me some of these pieces, he immediately said, no way, these pieces will not leave this country. So you can imagine my feeling, but I started a talk with Luis, this was his name, and we were talking about many things, and after 1 hour he took one small plate, jade plate, with a spiral inlay. And another strange thing was that for the exhibition we had about I think 30 of different drawings for a logo, and I decided we take the spiral and in orange and blue on black, and this shade plate was black and the spiral was blue and orange. So for me that was very strange. And exactly this plate he took, and we were 4 people there from Austria, and he took a small magnet on a string, and he asked my friends one by one to put this small magnet over the center of the spiral plate. And the first one was holding it, and the magnet was starting turning around until outside the plate automatically. And then it was going like a perpetuum mobile. Then the second one and the third one, and I was the fourth one, and I also put the magnet over the center, and it didn't move. And I was pushing it, and it didn't move. So after a while, I was smiling, and I said, Louis, I don't know why it doesn't work with me. So he was very surprised, and he asked my friends they should try it again, and the first one, and the second, and the third one, and every time the magnet started moving until the outside of the plate. So I was the last one again, and I was holding it over the center, I think about 2 minutes, and it didn't move, not 1 millimeter. So after a while, I put it away and I said, Louis, I don't know why it doesn't work with me. And he turned around to the owner and he said, you can lend him the pieces. So for me, it was a great happiness, of course, but until now, until today, I have no answer or idea why on 3 people it worked and with me not, and that was the reason why finally I could take the pieces to the exhibition to Vienna. Spiral is another very important and very old symbol. Mm-hmm. So for me, the pyramid with the eye existed as a symbol long time before there was any existence of Illuminati, Freemasons or anything else. And the same with the spiral. These are very strong symbols, I think, and some of these symbols were used for the wrong reason. The same happened with the swastika. Also a very old traditional symbol, and only because it was used in the Third Reich. So now the swastika, if you talk about the swastika, automatically you should be a Nazi. Or if I show the pyramid with the eye on my presentations, I am automatically an Illuminati or a Freemason or anything else. No, I can tell you I'm just a researcher. I have nothing to do with any of these organizations.
You are not a Freemason?
No, because I do not attend any organization. I try to do my research, and that's enough for me.
So do you think it's a coincidence that they've used the same symbol, or did they unearth some artifacts in the past? Perhaps, you've got this Luddite technology stuff that we can't replicate today. So it's quite possible that the control structure has already unearthed many of these artifacts, used the technology, suppressed the information, and adopted the logo, the Illuminati symbol, as we've seen in this one piece.
Could be. That's the question, why they are using these symbols. I think these symbols, they have a kind of power or something like that. So maybe that's the reason why they use it. But the symbol itself existed already long time before they existed.
That's right. And the number 33, you've got the 33-degree Mason. This also exists in your research.
There is one piece, also from the same collection from La Mana, that's a head of a cobra. The cobra never existed in South America, but this piece is also a jade cobra head, and it has an inlay on 32 lines and 1 point. That means 33. And on the left side and right side, there are 7 points. And the number 33 and the number 7, they are very, very old, traditional, very important numbers. And why these pieces were found in La Mana? Because Engineer Sotomayor found out that there is a well, and this well is, I think for me personally, it's one of, or maybe the best water on earth, because it has gold and silver colloidal in nanomicroscopical size. That means that if you drink this water, the gold and silver colloidal can go directly to the cell. And when I brought first time, it was 2003, I brought 10 1.5 liter plastic bottles with this water in a carton box to the Guayaquil airport with my luggage. I was with a friend together, and we checked in our luggage. And after a while, my name was announced, and I had to go in a special room. And there was my suitcase and this carton box, surrounded by 15 military and police. And the Interpol officer asked me if this is my luggage. And I said yes. And he said, what is inside this carton box? And I said, water from Ecuador. He said, open it. And I thought, as I did not pack it, I thought maybe someone was putting me something inside the box. So when I took out the 10 bottles and I saw there is nothing inside, I was really relaxed at the first moment. But then he asked me to pack it again, and he was putting the box 3-4 times through the scanner. And then he called a doctor. The doctor came with an injection, and he took out some water from some of the bottles, and he went away. And after 30 minutes he came back, and he was talking with the officer, and the officer took the box again 3-4 times into the scanner, and then he told me I can leave. Believe me, I was happy. And when we arrived in Vienna airport and we tried to, I was walking out, nothing to declare. Left side, right side, private policemen, and they brought me also to a special room. They asked me again what is inside. I explained it. And finally they showed me what happened with this water. When one officer told me, look, when I put this carton box with plastic bottles with water into the scanner and I make a photo, I must see on the scanner, on the screen, the shadow of the plastic bottles. So he was putting the box inside the scanner, and he made a photo. He said, look, and I was looking on the screen. I said, you didn't make a photo? He said, I did. The screen was completely black. So later on, we did many tests on this water. We found out that this water has such a strong natural energy in combination with the gold and silver colloidal that it mixed up the scanner. And this water is better than any energy drink or whatsoever.
Well, they just discovered, yesterday it came out that all the Monster energy drinks have been killing people. Several people have been dying from them.
This water is not killing you. I mean, we were drinking this water without knowing it. When we were driving 3 days over the Andes with my friend, we had only this water in plastic bottles with us, and the whole day we were drinking this water. And normally when I'm driving all day in a car, in the evening arriving, I'm not hungry, I'm just tired, I'm not in a good mood, I just want to go to bed. And I was just wondering myself, when we arrived first evening, late in the evening, a town in the Andes, we made a stop at the hotel, we took a shower, we went out, we had a few beers and a good dinner, and the next day also, so that means it was very good for health, let's say so. Just a few months before, we went to Crete to check several artifacts and places. together with a very good friend of mine, he invented a new technology where he can check on the spot and even from home through satellite and then on the spot different places. And he did it already together with me at the Bosnian pyramids, because last year in September I was invited to a conference and I had to talk about my researches on out-of-place artifacts. So when I got this invitation and I saw the speakers list, there were many scientists, so I thought I have to bring something scientific. So I asked my friend to do me a scan over the Sun Pyramid in Bosnia, and he did it. And at the end of my conference, I could show pictures with the drawing of the tunnel systems and even a room in the center of this pyramid. And it helped the people there a lot. Professor Osmanagic, who is doing since several years the research on it, had big problems because Egyptian delegation said this is never a pyramid, it's just a simple mountain. So the government prohibited him to do further researches on the pyramid itself. But now he got the official allowance to continue his work, because we could show that there are definitely there's a tunnel system and also room inside this pyramid. So when we came to Crete, we got informations from one of our friends there that there was a historical writing that the second son of King Minos was buried in a pyramid. And he brought us to a small, I would say not mountain, a small hill. And you could see already from the bottom that the earth on this hill is different, like on all the other hills. And my friend did on the spot the check, and he could identify this small hill as definitely as a pyramid. And then the South African researcher Michael Tellinger, I was there 3 times, and he showed me a lot of very interesting places, especially 100,000s of stone circles which are producing energy and sound. And he showed me also on one point which is called Adam's Calendar, which is an archaeoastronomical stone monument. He showed me in the valley 3 mountains, and he said he has the feeling that these 3 mountains are pyramids. So when I went down with my friend to South Africa, we went to these 3 mountains, and he did also a check on the spot, and he could also identify these 3 mountains as definitely pyramids. So you can see there are still many hidden pyramids all over the world.
And this, in your opinion, lends credence to the theory that we once had a world culture?
That's another point why I think there are so many things which are pointing out that once there must have been a global civilization, or at least a global connection all around the world.
Then why do we have different languages now?
That's the other story. For example, if
I've heard the Tower of Babel story. We can pass on that.
Right. I mean, in the Bible it says once all people spoke the same language until the building of the Tower of Babel. And the strange thing on these unknown writings we found on different continents, different countries, it's always the same writing, but not accepted by the science, because they say it is a mixture of runes, a mixture of Greek writings, and also some writing connected or very similar with the Easter Island writing or the Indus Valley writing. But Professor Schildmann in Germany, he explained that this language is older than the oldest language, and it has a likely connection also to Easter Island writing and to the Indus Wally writing Mohenjo-daro. So that means it's a mixture, but I think, or it's just an idea, can it be that this was the original writing, and out of this writing, as if we say there was one language and then it was mixed up in several languages, could it be that there was one writing and then part of this one, like the runes, were used on this side of the earth and the other part was used in another part? Could be, but it's, as I said before, it's just my idea.
I think what's incredible as well is the some of the discoveries in regards to medicine or science. The genetic disc is one of the big ones.
Yes, it's a perfect done disc, again from this material Lydite, which we cannot make the same in our days. We could not make from the same material the same genetical disc.
But our instruments are better, though, than these ones, are they not?
It's the same, it's from the same finding. The genetical disc and the medical instruments are from the same material, from the same area in Colombia.
No, what I'm asking is, are these Lydite instruments, the medical instruments, are they sharper and better than current modern instruments?
Not sharper. But for example, there is one, we call it the birth spoon. You can see on the handle the baby's head and the mother's string around his neck. That means the baby, while the birth, could die. So, no, that's on the knife. Sorry, excuse me. That's on a knife, but it's not sharp. And the birth spoon, you can see the baby, the head coming out of the vagina on the handle. And that means for me, this was made from a civilization, from a high civilization, for a lower civilized, lower knowledge civilization, to show for what to use this instrument. And when I had this instrument in Vienna at the exhibition, I asked some doctors to hold this and what is their opinion. Could it be used for helping the birth of a child? And they were holding it, and some of them told me, in their opinion, it would be safer than our today's technology. Because with our today's technology, you can have an accident. You can make an accident, a mistake with the baby's head. You can damage the baby's head. With this birth spoon from an old civilization, you can only hold it with your 2 fingers and with your thumb. That means you cannot push or you cannot use power. You can only use it very safely, very smoothly. That means there wouldn't be any problem for the baby's head. And the genetical disc, as you said before, there you have many strange carvings, and the most incredible ones are human egg with and without spermia, and on another part you have the spermias. These are things which you cannot see with your own eyes. You need microscopes to see these things. So how did they know in the past how a spermia, how a human egg with and without spermia is looking like? And you have also the fetus, the human fetus, in different stages of time.
Is there a dating on the genetical disc?
It is stone, Russell.
Again, yeah.
It is stone.
Well, this really helps the mainstream institutions, and they can carry on their BS stories because you simply can only prove it to a degree.
Yeah, that's the problem. But it cannot be refused as new done or as a fraud, because I would bet immediately $1,000 or $10,000 if someone can make me today the same disc from the same material. It's impossible.
You'll give them $10,000?
Yes.
They invented the microscope in the late 1500s.
Yeah.
You think this genetic disk predates that?
Definitely, because as all those species found in an area in Colombia, different places, but all made out from the same material. So that means if these species do not have any connection to any known pre-Columbian culture. And as I said before, the oldest one is the Valdivia, dates back 6,000 years. So if they have nothing to do with any of the existing cultures, they should be older than 6,000 years. But then the big question is, how could they see the spermias and the human egg with and without spermia?
Let's go to Sierra Leone and some of the discoveries there.
Sierra Leone, that's another very, very interesting place. And there was an Italian, a great geologist, Professor Pittoni. He was working for diamond mining. And after a while, digging down, they found some stone statues. And he passed away about 3 or 4 years ago, Professor Pittoni. As he was a great geologist, immediately he took from the finding place organic material for age dating, because he knew that stone age dating is impossible. So always when they found a stone statue, he took a piece of organic material close to the finding place. And those stone figurines, stone statues, they are very wonderful done, some of them 50 centimeters high, made out of granite, very heavy, but very well done. So the age dating, the youngest material, the youngest organic material found next to a statue was about 2,500 years, and the deepest one was made out of sandstone, and it looked like a kind of strange animal. I would say for me it looks a little bit like a T-Rex, the face of it, and this small statue was making a noise. So when Professor Pittoni found all these statues, or his stuff, they told him a story, a legend, that they are Muslims there, so that Allah was one day angry on some of his angels, and he petrified them and he threw them to earth. Then Allah took the stars and threw them to earth. These are the diamonds. And then he took the sky and threw it to earth. And also they found on several areas where they found also these stone statues, they found stones, sky blue stones. And they called these stones sky stones. So I brought some of them to the exhibition to Vienna, and we did a material check also in the Natural Historical Museum, and the result was this was artificial made stone, and they could identify all the material except the color, this very blue sky color, very, very blue one. So then he checked the little one, the little statue, which was age dating concerning the organic material next to the statue, and it was in the deepest point, 17,000 years, and this statue made a strange noise. So when I got this statue, there was a hole in the stomach area, and inside was a small iron ball. So I showed it in the exhibition, but before I brought it also to the museum for material check, also of the iron ball. And next day the professor called me and said, Mr. Dona, someone made a bad joke with you. I said, why? She said, because the statue is sandstone, but the iron bore is chromatical steel. And chromatical steel was found first time 1904 in Austria.
Like a ball bearing?
Yes. Perfect round chromatical steel ball. So I called Professor Pittoni immediately after coming to my office, and I said, Professor Pittoni, we have a big problem. He said, what's happened? I said, I did a material check on the little statue with the iron ball. He said, yeah, and what is the result? I said, the statue is sandstone. He said, oh yeah, I know that. But what is the metal? I said, it's chromatical steel, Professor, and chromatical steel was found 1904. He was laughing and he said, look, I'm not stupid. I'm geologist. I'm a scientist. If I find very deep underground a small statue which makes a strange noise, I do not just make a hole in the statue to see what is inside. I did X-rays from all sides before opening, and he sent me next day all the X-ray pictures, and you could see that the statue was closed, but you could see that there was already in the past a small point was taken out and back again, but from the surface it was completely closed, perfectly closed. So you couldn't see that there was an entrance.
Do you know how it was resealed?
No. He said it was just perfect. I didn't see anything. That's why he made an X-ray from all sides to locate where did they have the entrance. 17,000 years old chromatical steel. What explanation you have for that?
Well, what explanation is there for this not being on the front page of the newspapers? I mean, this is incredible information, and yet it's suppressed or disregarded.
Yeah, it's just impossible, because, as you know, high civilization 6,000 years, chromatical steel 1904. So it cannot be.
Too much work to go through all the efforts to fix history, eh?
No, it's not easy. I think it would not be easy at all to fix the history, because there are too many things difficult to explain. And I always say, and a very good friend of mine, Laurel Steinheis, she was writing a book about me, and she wrote as a title, Digging for Answers, Finding More Questions. And this is the reality. The more you find, the more you think you get an answer, the more questions you find.
Just like Socrates.
Yeah, but it's interesting, definitely.
Klaus, is there a website that my audience can go to look at some of these findings?
Yes, sure. It's www.unsolved-mysteries.info, INFO. And there is also one DVD. You can get it on Amazon. There are a lot of the artifacts, and there are also short films included and some explanations with pictures, because the most difficult problem in a radio interview is that you cannot show the pictures. But seeing the pictures is more easy for the audience also to understand what is the real strange or unexplainable thing with some of these pieces. And I think, Russell, from the history, from the old pieces, from all these informations, maybe we could learn something for the future. And Röhrig, he was a great guy, Russian German, and he made a very nice slogan. He said, if you don't know about your past, you cannot talk about the future. And I think we are in a time, and for me personally, we had several global catastrophes, maybe some of them human-made, and we are, I think, on the same way to destroy our earth. So we should learn from indigenous people, which we should learn from history to make the life of our children, of our grandchildren, livable and happy.
Klaus Dona, thank you so very much for being on the program. An honor.
Thank you very much, Russell, to invite me.
Klaus Dona has organized over 30 cultural exhibitions in Austria, Japan, and Korea. He primarily focuses on UPARTs, out-of-place artifacts. These are artifacts that do not fit into the established archaeological or scientific record and therefore should not exist, but they do. Klaus Dona has been researching these types of artifacts for over a decade. You can learn more about his research by visiting unsolvedmysteries.info. Klaus, what have you been up to this year? I understand that you went to Armenia and
yes,
a lot of very interesting things there.
Yes, a few weeks ago I was invited to fly to Armenia to stay there for 1 week to visit some of the very, very old and historical places there. And just by coincidence, a few weeks ago, I was watching the television program Ancient Aliens, and someone was showing pictures of Karahunj, which is 7,500 up to 8,000 years old stone circle formation and stone formation there in the south of Armenia. And he was talking about most probably this has to do something with aliens. I completely disagree with this sentence because I could visit Karahunj with my friends. They also showed me a book of a physicist, an Armenian physicist. His name was Paris Harouni. Unfortunately, a few years ago he passed away. But Professor Harouni did for many years personal research on these stone formations in Karahunj. And he found some of the stones with holes, precise done holes. And he explained also in his book that they used ceramic forms to put into these holes. And through these, 3 of these stones, watching the sun, they could make a measurement already around 8,000 years ago of the latitude and earth size of the world. That means, if you remember in the Middle Age, it was said that the world is flat, and if you reach the end of the world, you might fall down. That means this is one of the stories where human lost a huge knowledge of the past, and that's why it is for me so interesting in researching on old traditional places and artifacts. As we were wondering why this stone circle is so precise done, and also the holes are so perfect made for watching the sun and the stars, we did a scan over this area with the technology of a friend of mine. And we found out that close to the stone circle there are graveyards, and the graves are in form of circles. So we are just wondering, maybe the formation of the stone circles have something to do with the formation of the graves. So later on, when I returned back home and I had a meeting with my friend and we discussed the visit of Karahunj, he said, let's do a scan over Stonehenge. We found around 5 circles of graveyards, meaning graves in circle form around Stonehenge, but in quite different distances. So if we would inform archaeologists in England, I don't think that ever they would believe us. But we then did other scan over the Easter Island, and we found also some very interesting things, but this we try now to get in contact with the university or the group which is doing now the excavations on the Maui, and we would like to get cooperation with them, and then we could show them also some interesting, very unknown places in Easter Island, and that means also again the Maori, for me, do not have to do anything with aliens from other stars. I think so. Then, of course, I visited some museums in Armenia, and in the National Museum in Yerevan. I was impressed. I saw one arrow bow, which was approximately 6 feet high, and the wood of this arrow bow is so thick that for me it is unbelievable that a man even with 180 centimeters or 2 meters would have been able to shoot one arrow with this very, very big and strong arrow bow. So I watched other showcases, and I saw also one very big stone axe, which remembered me on the findings of some of those oversized stone axes in Ecuador in South America, where there is also there are facts of human giants, which we come on later in our discussion. Then I asked my friends in Armenia if they do know some more stories or legends of giants in Armenia, and of course there are many legends. And just a few months earlier, a Russian archaeological team did excavations in the north of Armenia, and they discovered several human giant skeletons with a size of 3 meters, which is close to 9 feet, approximately 8 to 9 feet, meaning definitely for me some of those so-called giants.
Was there any dating done on the bow? Do we know approximately how old it might be?
No, I don't think. I didn't see in the museum that there was something written of the age of this arrow bow. It would be very interesting if they would do a wood age dating, which would be possible. But six feet, can you imagine, Russell? It would be very difficult for a man to shoot an arrow with that. You have to be bigger than a normal big guy.
You'd have to be at least 10 feet.
I would say so, yeah.
Do you think it's possible? You mentioned Stonehenge.
Yes.
Do you think giants built Stonehenge?
This is a big question. As long as there are no findings, I wouldn't say so, because you can only be sure if there would be an excavation of one of these graves, and it would show that they were bigger than normal size. And then also in the north of Armenia, there are stones in lines, and it remembered me very much on my visit to South Africa. I was 3 times there. Together with Michael Tellinger, we did the research on the stone circles, the 100,000s of stone circles in South Africa. And most of these stone circles are connected with stone lines. It looks like streets, markings, or like channels. And also the Karahunch formation remembered me very much with the so-called Adam's calendar in South Africa, which is age-dated approximately 80,000 years, and 100,000 of these stone circles. But there you can find a lot of information on Michael Tellinger's website. So it remembered me, and it could be a connection in between, at least a connection of knowledge. And the same was with hundreds and hundreds of stone paintings in Karahunch, around Karahunch and in Armenia. And there's another professor now studying these stone wall paintings, And there are so many similarities between the Armenian stone wall paintings with the old Egyptian hieroglyphs. Also, again, a connection between two countries, even they have a distance in between, a long distance. I took some books about the Rongorongo writings from Easter Island and also Harappa, the Indus Valley. And again there are many symbols which are very much similar. And as I don't know if I told you in our last interview, that we found stone writings, an unknown writing, the same unknown writing on stones in several countries all over the world, beginning from Ecuador to Colombia, in United States, in France, in Italy, in Malta, in Turkmenistan, and even in Australia. And there was one German professor, Schildmann. He was the president of the German Linguistic Society, and he was perfect in speaking and writing more than 40 languages. And he wrote a book about the decipherment of this unknown writing. He deciphered some stones from Ecuador, from the Father Crespi collection, from Colombia, even from the United States, from the so-called Burroughs Cave, which is officially a fraud, a fake, but definitely he could translate this language, and also he translated some writings, same writings from stones on in France, Glosel, which also until today is not accepted by the official science. Even the stones in Glosel were found already in 1924. And he also wrote in his book that this worldwide unknown writing has many similarities with the writing of the Easter Island, Rongorongo writing, and the Harappa writing, Indus Valley. So again, when I saw these similar symbols in Armenia, it remembered me immediately in this global writing. And that's for me, there are only two possibilities, Russell. Either there was a global civilization, or at least a global contact between all the continents thousands of years ago.
Have any of the UParts that you've had in any of your exhibitions or you've researched turned out to be a hoax after the fact?
No, sir. We had some scientists who helped us to check some of the pieces, and not one time it was declared as a hoax or new made or fraud.
Now, would you accept if it was a hoax?
Of course I would accept, because the only chance to get the final approval on artifacts is through different scientists. That's what I always say. We need the help of the official science to get more light in the darkness of our past.
So when you're trying to verify the authenticity of a piece, what are some of the steps that you go through?
First, I have to find a scientist who is an expert on this kind of artifact. For example, 2001, before our first exhibition in Vienna, I got some pieces from Colombia, which were declared in Colombia by the Ministry of Culture as new-made artifacts. But when I was there and I talked with the owner, Professor Gutierrez, I knew that these pieces are really old. But they do not fit any known pre-Columbian culture, so for the official science, these pieces are new-made or fraud. So when I got these pieces to Vienna, I called two scientists, one professor at the Natural Historical Museum at the Geological Department. She is the expert on stone material checking. And the second scientist was Dr. Distelberger. He was the director of the treasure room of the most famous museum in Vienna, and he is also known worldwide as a top expert on old stonework and precious stonework. So they agreed to do a check on the pieces, so we did on each of these Colombian pieces an X-ray fractal research, and the material was lyddite. Lyddite is a very hard stone, which is nearly the same hardness like granite, but the structure of lyddite is like leaves, and it's very hard to work on lyddite. And when we had the approval of the material, Dr. Distelberger checked all these pieces, and after a long, serious checking, he told me, I cannot tell you who made those things, I cannot tell you when they made it and how they made it, but the only thing I can tell you, and I'm happy that I was here and I saw the material check personally, we are not able to do the same artifacts with the same material in our days, even with our high technology.
You don't have to answer this, obviously, if you don't want to, but are you a creationist or an evolutionist?
How to answer this question is very hard for me. What I found in several countries all over the world, I cannot agree with Darwin's theory. I cannot agree. Because humans are much, much older than we know officially in our days. There is, for example, Michael Cremo, whom I know personally, and he is a great researcher, who did a lot of research on the age of human. And even myself, I found in Colombia, in an area which is called Villa de Leyva, where you can find millions of fossils. There is one professor, he is a professor for anthropology, professor for archaeological plant research, and he showed me several petrified fruits and vegetables, meaning banana, pineapple, corn, avocado, cocoa bean, all these cultivated and petrified fruits and vegetables. And in the same area they found a stone plate with a human hand skeleton and foot skeleton in the stone petrified, and the age dating of the geologists of these stones in Colombia is about 120 to 140 million years. So even at that time dinosaurs should not have lived, and even if we say we are coming from the monkeys, even the monkeys would not have existed around 120 to 140 million years ago. But then the big question, who would have planted fruits and vegetables 120 million years ago? I think ancient aliens would say immediately that must have been aliens. I don't agree. But there's another very interesting finding. I think it was 6 or 7 years ago in Bolivia, where they also found a big rock formation, and in this rock formation you can see the precise footprint of a human, and the age dating there is about 50 to 60 million years.
Going back to what you said earlier with the Egyptian hieroglyphs being seen all over the world, you mentioned Australia. That seems that's quite surprising. Let's talk to us about that.
Yes, I can talk now about it because the two Australian researchers, Stephen and Evan Stone, they already spoke on interview about this interesting finding. So they agreed that I can also talk about it. A few months ago, I received an email from Stephen Stone, and he heard about our scan over the Bosnian pyramid, that we could show Professor Samos Managic there all the tunnel system inside the so-called Sun Pyramid in Bosnia, and he asked me if we might be able to help them because they found old Egyptian hieroglyphs encarved in stone formation in Australia. The translation of Egyptologists were possible, but still the official archaeologists do not accept these incarvings as original Egyptian hieroglyphs because they are thinking maybe end of 19th century somebody did a hoax and he made over 300 Egyptian hieroglyphs in a stone formation on a place where normally never ever some people would pass by. So for me that doesn't make any sense. So it was even possible to translate these hieroglyphs, and one of the translations was saying that the second son of Khufu, Cheops, was bitten by a poison snake 2 times and he died and he was buried there. So as they checked the area around the stone formation and they didn't find anything, they asked me if we could do a scan over the area and if we could help them to find, if there is a grave, to find it. So my friend did the scan, and he found a little bit far away from the hieroglyphs an entrance, a tunnel system which is ending in a room. And in the room he could detect bones and precious material. So I sent this scan to Stephen Stone, and next weekend they went there, and they went to the place which was marked on this scan on a Google Earth picture, and they found a hidden stone wall, and they could open an entrance. They found a man-made tunnel, but after approximately 8 meters, it was blocked with fallen down man-made stone blocks. For me, that was an activated grave robbery trap, and they told me that many years ago there was a very heavy earthquake in this area, and I think through the earthquake this grave robbery trap was activated. So they are now trying to open it with an official geologist and archaeologist, and if they find really a skeleton and some artifacts, they might be able to prove that these hieroglyphs in Australia are original, and that would mean that Egyptians came already around 4,500 years to Australia, which until now also is, for the official science, incredibly impossible.
Klaus, over 10 years ago, you came across remains of a 25-foot giant.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
2003, I got an invitation through Wayne Deloria, Professor Wayne Deloria. He was the most famous North American Indian. He was double professor, and he was known as the most correct and great North American Indian in our days, and he invited me through the catalogue of my exhibition in Vienna. He invited me to a private meeting with 15 elders of the big North American tribes, and the story of the 3 days meeting was giants and little people. And Russell, until this meeting, I had no idea about giant bones or little people or so on. But after that meeting, I came across on the internet, on a Brazilian website, and there was a report about an Ecuadorian priest, Father Carlos Vaca, that he found 1964 the broken skeleton of a 25 feet human giant. So it took me about 2 years until I could find the family of Father Carlos Vaca, because when I arrived in Loja, in the capital city of the province of Loja, where Father Carlos Vaca was living, they told me that exactly 1 month before he passed away, which was very, very sad for me, because I'm quite sure this man could have told me many, many more interesting stories. But I got in contact with the family of his brother, and they kept many, many bones, broken bones of this 25 feet giant, and I asked the family if I might be allowed to take some of these bones with me for research, scientific research in Austria, and they allowed me to bring some of them, and I picked up some pieces which I thought it might be a possibility to find out if it's real human or not. And when I brought these bones to Austria, and several experts did a check on them, they recognized 3 bones as looks like human, but it's impossible because they are 5 times bigger. And one bone was a big part of a heel bone, one was a nose bone, and the third one was the so-called os occipitale, which we have under our skull to make us able to move and roll the skull. So, as this was the explanation of the family and the bones and the identification that it looks like human but 5 times bigger, later on we found an oversized granite stone axe in Cuenca, which was 70 centimeters long, which is about 2 feet, very heavy, and you could see that on one place, on both sides, there once was a rope over it for holding it. And then we compared the normal stone axes which were found there and this one, and the difference is the one is approximately 5 times bigger than a normal axe. So again we have here the 5 times taller or bigger. Then we found in archives writings from historians, like one was Chiesa de Leon, which wrote at the end of the 16th century, "Today we found at the coast of Esmeraldas several human skeletons. They were 5 times taller than we were, and they were burned because the priest said that must be from devil." So, again here, and then I received from a friend of mine, an Ecuadorian researcher, Manuel Palacios. He sent me a photograph which was made in the Cuevas de los Tallos. This is a famous and most biggest underground tunnel system in Ecuador. And there you can see in one of the big holes a wall painting of a human, and the size is approximately 25 feet. So there are more and more explanations which are showing or pointing out that in the past definitely human giants must have existed, and all the legends and histories and stories all over the world about giants are not just legends, there is a lot of reality included.
I was watching a show, and 300 million years ago, the dragonfly had a wingspan of 2 to 3 feet. Now, today, the dragonfly is maybe 4 inches wide. Animals have gotten smaller. Plants, too. Plants and animals have all gotten smaller over the millions of years. 300 million years ago, the oxygen was at 35%. Today, it's at 21%. What I'm getting at here is that it's theoretically possible that giants could have existed.
Yes, yeah.
Is this 25-foot giant, is that the largest that we know of?
At the moment, yes, but there is the Russian Professor Muldashev. He is the most famous eye doctor because he did the only, until now, only one existing and functioning eye transplantation to a lady. And he did several times researches in Tibet, and he was one day allowed to enter into one of the so-called Samadhi tunnels, where there are people sitting in the lotus seat from normal size up to 10 meters, which would be a little bit over, I think, 30 feet. And nobody believed him. Even he is a member of the Russian Society of Academy, and he is the most famous eye doctor. Nobody believed him, and when he got a knowledge about the bones of the giant here which I have here in Vienna, he visited me 2 days. And he was talking about sleeping giants, because he said the explanation of the Tibetan monks is that these sleeping human, the body has zero function, but they are connected with the so-called silver string with the universe, and they explained that they could come back to life whenever they would decide it. And these Samadhi tunnels are protected through energy, and you would die if you would go into one of these tunnels. This is the explanation of Professor Muldashev.
There are a lot of hoaxes. People do create artifacts that are made to look old, but they are not.
Definitely. That's why I'm always, when I get the new information, first of all, I'm skeptical. Then I would like to see it personally. Then, if possible, we could have scientific research on it, and then you have the final answer. But it takes time.
What do you think the percentage of these things being hoaxes are?
As I saw some BBC documentations about hoax, people who made hoax, like the most famous one in Israel, who did a stone piece from the Temple of Solomon and other things. They are so perfect that even museums believe that these pieces are original. So it's very hard to say. But I did not have yet in the pieces I checked a real identified hoax. But there was once a collection of incredible opals in United States, and I visited the place, and finally I found out that all these pieces are new-made. He was a very famous anthropologist, and his research was sponsored mainly by National Geographic and Smithsonian, and he even wrote a book, and that's why I wanted to see this collection. And this professor passed away, so I don't want to mention any name, but he wrote a book, and it was so precise and perfect. It was mentioned how the information for this piece was found, how the expedition there, how the excavation was done. It was a professional report, archaeological report on each of those pieces with black and white photograph and everything. So when I got first time the book, I thought I have to see these pieces, it's incredible. And I read who wrote the book, and for me it was sure these pieces are original. And when I visited United States and I found the place of his wife, he passed away, I think it was 1 or 2 years before, and I saw some of the original pieces in her house. For me, those pieces were original. But later on, I took out my special classes, which I was using when we had the transport of artifacts, of cultural artifacts like famous paintings to Japan. you have to use special glasses to check if one of the scratches was old or new one. So I took out these special glasses and I checked it from very close, and I could see that there is very, very fine textile structure in some of these artifacts. And then I spoke straight to his wife and I said, are these really originals? And she said, yeah, I explained to you. And then I asked her to take these glasses and I showed her the textile formation. And then finally she said, yeah, I told you these are original. My husband made them. But believe me, if I would not have had my special glasses with me, I would have said these pieces are original.
Yeah, they're very good.
Perfect.
The elongated skulls, there are so many of those that are fake too. Many are real, but many are faked as well.
No, I never heard about a fake one, Russell.
You never heard about a fake one. I heard about a guy that makes fake ones.
Really?
And he explains how you make them, and he sells them down in South America.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a process of how you shine the skull.
Yeah, but it's a different of a real bone material and an artificial skull, Russell.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert.
No, of course you can make artificial ones, but if you hold this one in your hand and you check it carefully, of course you see if this is really bone, and also if you knock on it, the sound is different, like it's like a ceramic or whatever. I only saw elongated skulls in museums, and the most interesting museum I visited concerning elongated skulls is in Ica. That's the place where the Ica stones are, also in a private museum. And this museum is called Maria Reiche Museum, because Maria Reiche was a German scientist who did nearly her whole life the research on the Nazca lines. So they named this this official little museum Maria Reiche Museum, and in this museum I saw the most incredible elongated skulls I ever saw.
Yeah, I spoke with Brian Forster about those.
Brian Forster, a few years ago, sent me an email and he asked me if I can give him more information about the elongated skulls, and of course I gave him the information about the Maria Reiche Museum, and I sent him also some photos and so on, and then he appeared as the expert on elongated skulls, but that was only about 3 years ago he started. But we did already the research in 2000 and 2001 on the spot.
Very cool. Well, it's always an honor to talk with you, Klaus. It's pretty interesting stuff. I wish I could be you for a couple of weeks.
Why don't you take one time, your time, and you go with me on one of these trips?
Yeah, I'm really into it. I'm actually doing a vacation next year in February. I'm thinking about going to Vietnam but I'm up for any kind of adventure.
We are planning next year, maybe in August or September, a 2 weeks trip to Ecuador and Peru, to some places which are not really well known.
Wow. Well, we'll chat about that after the show. I'm interested in coming along.
Okay.
Now, Klaus, I'm going to let you go soon, but what do you have planned for the rest of the year? Anything on the horizon?
Yes, next week I'm going to Bosnia. I have a speech at a big conference with many scientists who did researches on the Bosnian pyramids, because even until today on internet you find a lot of reports about the hoax, the biggest hoax on pyramids. But believe me, we did the scan of the Sun Pyramid and we could show all the tunnel systems inside this so-called mountain. So for me it is definitely not just a mountain, because a mountain does not have artificial tunnel system inside. So for me it is a kind of pyramid. And then I have some conferences in Paris, not yet scheduled, but I think I have to go this year again to Armenia to do further researches there, and also to Bolivia.
And of course, if people want to check out your website, that's unsolvedmysteries.info.
I have to say we are working now on a new website because this one is quite old, but you know, Russell, if you do a lot of researches, people always ask me, when do you write a book? I cannot sit several months in front of the computer writing a book. I said, when I'm gonna be 75 and tired of traveling around, then I start writing a book. But I prefer to make research on the spot.
You're still a young man, Klaus. Before the show, you even said that you could climb up a mountain faster than I could, and I'm half your age.
I didn't say that I can climb up faster. I said, let's climb up together and let's see who is first up there.
Okay, well, I took it a different way, but
no, thanks. I am in a good condition, and that's the most important. And what I'm really considering is we should learn from the past, because I have a wonderful daughter and most wonderful grandchild, and I'm really scared about their future. And I think if we study more on the past, what happened, for example, with the global civilization, there might have been several times global catastrophes on Earth, maybe natural catastrophes or even human-made ones. And when you read today's newspapers that United States and France and England is ready to attack Syria, then I'm really afraid about our future, but most of all about the future of our children and our grandchildren.
I think the Syrian thing has a lot of people concerned, including myself, of course. And even many of these ancient artifacts, they're under threat as well.
Yes.
Bombs are going, they already have destroyed many of things in Damascus and whatnot.
Afghanistan, many of them.
Yes, just within the last couple of years.
And now Syria also, I'm quite sure also there are many, many old traditional places destroyed.
Yeah.
Why don't we learn from the past?
We're not a whole lot more civilized than we were 1,000 years ago. Not really.
It looks like.
Devolution, as Michael
Yes.
Bramo would say.
Yes. I love him.
He was on the program last month, and Anthony F. Sanchez guest hosted for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was great.
I have to listen it.
Klaus Dona, thank you so much for being on the program. As always, an honor.
Thank you. It's an honor for me, Russell, and thank you very, very much for inviting me, and best regards to all your listeners.